So maybe you're on vacation, you're in Athens for the first time. During the day you're experiencing a bunch of new events and new sights and sounds, and as it's going by that is prospectively it seems to be flying by. In retrospect, however, maybe the next day or you're back from vacation looking back upon that, it seems to be a long day. So retrospectively it seems that it was an extended period of time. And this is something that was pointed out as far back as William James in his Principles of Neuroscience over 100 years ago. And the point is that retrospectively we're not so much telling time but we're rebuilding or estimating how much time has elapsed based on the number of experiences we have in memory. So retrospectively you're more estimating how much time has elapsed. If there was a period full of new memories, then you're left with the impression that it was a long period of time retrospectively. But prospectively, as it was taking place, you were paying attention to some sort of internal clock in our brain, which you were looking at or querying, that was telling you that not much time has elapsed, because you weren't paying much attention to time. So on the other hand, when you're very bored or in an anxious state, people experience time as dragging or going slow, again, prospectively. The consumption of berries can enhance beneficial signaling in the brain. Plant foods are our primary source of antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compounds, but some plant foods may be better than others. As I've explained before, 1 cup of blueberries a day can improve cognition among older adults, as shown in this randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. And the same thing in kids after just a single meal of blueberries, though 2 cups may work better than 1. That single hit of berries may also improve mood. A double-blind, placebo-controlled, crossover study in which kids are asked a series of questions: are you very slightly or not at all, a little, moderately, quite a bit, or extremely interested, excited, strong, etc. Before and after drinking the placebo, no significant change, but 2 hours after consuming about 2 cups of blueberries, their positive mood scores significantly improved. They felt more enthusiastic, alert, inspired, attentive, that kind of thing. That was in young adults, ages 18 through 21, same thing in 7 to 10-year-old children. Some dangerous new mood-enhancing drug or Ritalin? No, blueberries, and just after a single meal. Now blueberries can't do everything. Although a cup of berries certainly appears to improve brain function, no improvement in walking or balance was observed. In other words, overachievers are trying to solve a range of psychological problems through material or worldly means. And this is why their efforts must, in a deep sense, always be doomed to failure, even when it appears to most of the world as if overachievers are succeeding beyond measure. Because success is the moment when overachievers are likely to notice the doomed nature of their ambitions, it is a particularly troubling and dangerous eventuality. Depression may set in just after the company is sold. The star will fall into a crisis just after they finally gain worldwide recognition. At exactly the point when their work is acclaimed or finds its audience, overachievers are at risk of severe breakdown. So long as they are merely running, they can forget to notice that their goal is misaligned with their true inner ambition. They must wait for success to reveal the fateful nature of their life's quest. $1.2 trillion of debts for diplomas make it abundantly obvious that higher education is a consumer product you can buy. All of us talk about education just as the economists do now, as an investment that you make to improve the human stock by training them for work. As an investment you make to sort and classify people so that employers can hire them more easily. The U.S. News and World Report ranks colleges just as the Consumer Report rates washing machines. The language is peppered with barbarisms. Teachers are called service providers, students are called consumers. Sociology and Shakespeare and soccer and science, all of these are content. Student debt is profitable. Only not on you. Your debt fattens the profit of the student loan industry. The two 800-pound gorillas, of which Sallie Mae and Navient posted last year a combined profit of $1.2 billion. And just like home mortgages, student loans can be bundled and packaged and sliced and diced, and sold on Wall Street. And colleges and universities that invest in these securitized loans profit twice. Once from your tuition, and then again from the interest on debt. With all that money to be made, are we surprised that some in the higher education business have begun to engage in false advertising, in bait and switch, in exploiting the very ignorance that they pretend to educate? What I've learned is that the most effective people and teams in any domain do something we can all emulate. They go through life deliberately alternating between two zones, the learning zone and the performance zone. The learning zone is when our goal is to improve. Then we do activities designed for improvement, concentrating on what we haven't mastered yet, which means we have to expect to make mistakes, knowing that we will learn from them. That is very different from what we do when we're in our performance zone, which is when our goal is to do something as best as we can, to execute. Then we concentrate on what we have already mastered and we try to minimize mistakes. Both of these zones should be part of our lives, but being clear about when we want to be in each of them, with what goal, focus and expectations, helps us better perform and better improve. The performance zone maximizes our immediate performance, while the learning zone maximizes our growth and our future performance. The reason many of us don't improve much despite our hard work is that we tend to spend almost all of our time in the performance zone. This hinders our growth, and ironically, over the long term, also our performance. Say you're at the beach, and you get sand in your eyes. How do you know the sand is there? You obviously can't see it, but if you are a normal, healthy human, you can feel it, that sensation of extreme discomfort, also known as pain. Now, pain makes you do something, in this case, rinse your eyes until the sand is gone. And how do you know the sand is gone? Exactly because there's no more pain. There are people who don't feel pain. Now, that might sound cool, but it's not. If you can't feel pain, you could get hurt, or even hurt yourself and never know it. Pain is your body's early warning system. It protects you from the world around you, and from yourself. As we grow, we install pain detectors in most areas of our body. These detectors are specialized nerve cells called nociceptors that stretch from your spinal cord to your skin, your muscles, your joints, your teeth, and some of your internal organs. Just like all nerve cells, they conduct electrical signals, sending information from wherever they're located back to your brain. But, unlike other nerve cells, nociceptors only fire if something happens that could cause or is causing damage. So, gently touch the tip of a needle. You'll feel the metal, and those are your regular nerve cells. But you won't feel any pain. Now, the harder you push against the needle, the closer you get to the nociceptor threshold. Push hard enough, and you'll cross that threshold and the nociceptors fire, telling your body to stop doing whatever you're doing. Your posture, the way you hold your body when you're sitting or standing, is the foundation for every movement your body makes, and can determine how well your body adapts to the stresses on it. These stresses can be things like carrying weight, or sitting in an awkward position. And the big one we all experience all day every day, gravity. If your posture isn't optimal, your muscles have to work harder to keep you upright and balanced. Some muscles will become tight and inflexible. Others will be inhibited. Over time, these dysfunctional adaptations impair your body's ability to deal with the forces on it. Poor posture inflicts extra wear and tear on your joints and ligaments, increases the likelihood of accidents, and makes some organs, like your lungs, less efficient. Researchers have linked poor posture to scoliosis, tension headaches, and back pain, though it isn't the exclusive cause of any of them. Posture can even influence your emotional state and your sensitivity to pain. so there are a lot of reasons to aim for good posture. The fat stored in your adipose tissue is a super energy-rich substance that your body can use in a pinch to fuel your cells. If you can't eat for whatever reason, or you just need a little extra energy to grow or reproduce, your body can turn to your fat, which is why from a survival perspective, having some fat is actually a good thing. Still, you'd think that losing weight would be pretty straightforward. Just eat less than you need, and force your body use up some of its fat, then go back to eating a normal amount when you're the size you want to be. But the body doesn't want to lose its energy buffer no matter how large or small it is, so when you cut calories, it reacts in ways that ultimately make it harder to lose weight. A lot of the pushback is driven by changes to hormones. One of the most important is leptin, a hormone secreted by your fat cells. The larger your fat cells are, the more leptin they produce. So when you lose weight, leptin levels drop. Parts of your brain like your hypothalamus interpret less leptin as starvation, and it jumps in and starts telling your body to conserve energy and to eat more to rebuild those reserves. Other organs also use hormones to complain to your brain about the decrease in fuel intake. Your stomach tells your brain it's not getting filled by increasing levels of the hormone ghrelin. At the same time, your pancreas secretes less insulin, which regulates blood sugar, and amylin, which signals fullness. So when you cut calories, ghrelin levels rise and insulin and amylin levels plummet, signaling your brain to increase appetite, making you feel ravenous. In a 2007 study, for example, a group of neuroscientists had people learn the locations of a bunch of different objects while it smelled like roses, then made it smell like roses again while they were asleep. When they woke up, the subjects were better at remembering where the objects were, compared to when they did the same task without any smells. The researchers proposed that when the subjects smelled roses while they slept, that boosted the memory consolidation process because their brains associated the smell with the memories of the object locations. Basically, the smell acted as a cue to their brains to reactivate those memories, strengthening the connections between the neurons that stored them. And stronger connections meant they had an easier time recalling the memories when they woke up. That 2007 study was small, but later studies that tested the idea found similar results. Most of us learn to speak at such an early age that we don't even remember it. We form our spoken repertoire through unconscious habits, not memorized rules. And because speech also uses mood and intonation for meaning, its structure is often more flexible, adapting to the needs of speakers and listeners. This could mean avoiding complex clauses that are hard to parse in real time, making changes to avoid awkward pronunciation, or removing sounds to make speech faster. The linguistic approach that tries to understand and map such differences without dictating correct ones is known as descriptivism. Rather than deciding how language should be used, it describes how people actually use it, and tracks the innovations they come up with in the process. But while the debate between prescriptivism and descriptivism continues, the two are not mutually exclusive. At its best, prescriptivism is useful for informing people about the most common established patterns at a given point in time. This is important, not only for formal contexts, but it also makes communication easier between non-native speakers from different backgrounds. Descriptivism, on the other hand, gives us insight into how our minds work and the instinctive ways in which we structure our view of the world. Ultimately, grammar is best thought of as a set of linguistic habits that are constantly being negotiated and reinvented by the entire group of language users. So how do companies and investors use the market today? Let's imagine a new coffee company that decides to launch on the market. First, the company will advertise itself to big investors. If they think the company is a good idea, they get the first crack at investing, and then sponsor the company's initial public offering, or IPO. This launches the company onto the official public market, where any company or individual who believes the business could be profitable might buy a stock. Buying stocks makes those investors partial owners in the business. Their investment helps the company to grow, and as it becomes more successful, more buyers may see potential and start buying stocks. As demand for those stocks increases, so does their price, increasing the cost for prospective buyers, and raising the value of the company's stocks people already own. For the company, this increased interest helps fund new initiatives, and also boosts its overall market value by showing how many people are willing to invest in their idea. However, if for some reason the company starts to seem less profitable, the reverse can also happen. If investors think their stock value is going to decline, they'll sell their stocks with the hopes of making a profit before the company loses more value. As stocks are sold and demand for the stock goes down, the stock price falls, and with it, the company's market value. This can leave investors with big losses unless the company starts to look profitable again. People want to work at places that give them free food and swag, and it's a prestigious organization, or I have a prestigious title, where I can make a best friend at work. The things that we are told over and over again go into making a good work culture. In reality, those are some of the least prioritized things for the majority of workers in America today. To the extent that leaderships of companies are under these illusions, they will continue to incentivize and design environments that are no longer a very good fit to the true trade-off priorities of the workforce. What people want is work to be a positive part of the rest of their life. They want to be trusted to be able to make decisions about how they do their work, and they are expecting more meaning and purpose in their work. The thing that will hold us back from a good life, rather than just working to work, are these illusions that keep pulling us back to conformity to something for which the group no longer actually values. We all don't have to quit our job and go somewhere else to find fulfillment. That it is closer than we think, and a lot of it is just subtle changes, particularly around giving more control to employees, trusting them more, listening to the things they care about. So why doesn't the Fed just decide to print infinite $100 bills to make everyone happy and rich? Well, because then the bills wouldn't be worth anything. Think about the purpose of currency, which is to be exchanged for goods and services. If the total amount of currency in circulation increases faster than the total value of goods and services in the economy, then each individual piece will be able to buy a smaller portion of those things than before. This is called inflation. On the other hand, if the money supply remains the same, while more goods and services are produced, each dollar's value would increase in a process known as deflation. So which is worse? Too much inflation means that the money in your wallet today will be worth less tomorrow, making you want to spend it right away. So while this would stimulate business, it would also encourage overconsumption, or hoarding commodities like food and fuel, raising their prices and leading to consumer shortages and even more inflation. But deflation would make people want to hold onto their money, and a decrease in consumer spending would reduce business profits, leading to more unemployment and a further decrease in spending, causing the economy to keep shrinking. So most economists believe that while too much of either is dangerous, a small, consistent amount of inflation is necessary to encourage economic growth. How do we know that there are other subjects in the world? And how do we know ourselves as selves? Sartre thinks that, in order to answer these two questions, we need to think about the way that others structure our experiences through the scene that he calls the look. So imagine you're in a park and you're alone and you're walking along. You're seeing grass, you're seeing benches, etc. And then suddenly you see another person walking. Now for Sartre, the other person is fundamentally different from the other things that you have encountered so far in the park. They're different from the grass, the benches, the trees, because they appear to you as a center of their own experience. Sartre says, in seeing the other person, I feel the world stolen away from me. It's almost as if there is a sinkhole of being. Because as much as I like to think of myself as the organizing center of the world, as it turns out, there's somebody else who is the center of their own world, and this, he thinks, is a fundamentally threatening experience. So our first encounters with others for start are fundamentally the site of conflict. It's not a warm, fuzzy feeling of being together. In 2012, after reviewing the evidence, the American Medical Association released a major statement: night light can disrupt your sleep cycle. However, for whatever reason, not many people have been since informed about it. So here is the basics of what you need to know. When you're exposed to a significant amount of light, specifically of the blue wavelengths, your body suppresses melatonin production to make you feel more awake. Normally this evolutionary design works pretty well. With the coming of night and day, our melatonin levels waxes and wanes, giving us a circadian rhythm. However, since the invention of artificial lights, we're being exposed to more and more light at nighttime, and these effects can be pretty big. Here's what happens when you place participants in a room with similar brightness to your average household. This is where their melatonin levels would normally be if they were sleeping in a dark room, and here is their melatonin levels in that lit room. You can see the huge suppression of melatonin, and it doesn't take too much to see these effects either. We make our countertops with quartz, our clothes with cotton, our windows with glass, and our streets with asphalt because water can't dissolve these materials. They're made mostly of molecules with no charged parts. It would be silly to build, say, windows with something that can dissolve in water, like sugar, unless you're going to eat them. And lots of the substances that water does dissolve, like washable markers, are things we engineered so that they can be washed away. We've also engineered versions that aren't dissolvable in water for when we don't want them to be washed away. By making sure water dissolves what we want it to and only what we want it to, we've been able to adapt a life to a world in which water dissolves so much stuff. We humans also literally adapted to a world in which water dissolves so much stuff. The outer layer of our skin is built in a way that makes it uncharged and therefore undissolvable. And the membrane surrounding each of the cells inside us has a similar undissolvable layer. The only reason we humans exist at all on this watery planet, or that trees, fish, bacteria, or anything else exists, is that we evolved barriers that could keep water from dissolving us into goo. Any life forms that didn't were simply dead in the water. but lowering your blood sugar after a meal is just about the only benefit of drinking apple cider vinegar. Research does suggest that acetic acid can slow down the accumulation of body fat and prevent metabolic disorders in mice and rats. But there's little evidence that it has the same effect on humans. In one weight loss experiment, 30 volunteers drank 2 tablespoons of either apple cider vinegar, malt vinegar, or a placebo drink, twice a day, for 2 months straight, and none of them lost weight. In an older study with a similar design, participants did lose weight, but only about a third of a pound each week, which McDonald says isn't much. But if not for weight loss, what about using cider vinegar to whiten your teeth? I caution people against that. That's because cider vinegar is an acid. In fact, most brands have a pH between 2 and 3, which is similar to stomach acid, so swishing it around in your mouth can over time wear down the enamel around your teeth, leaving them feeling rough to the touch and more susceptible to cavities and decay. According to a study on the sleep habits of 400,000 Taiwanese adults, the risk of coronary heart disease is about the same in people who sleep less than 4 hours a night as it is in those who sleep more than 8 hours a night. Subjects who underslept had a 35% higher risk of heart disease, and people who overslept had a 34% increase. Another study, published in 2009, followed 276 subjects for 6 years and found that people who slept either less than 7 hours or more than 8 hours were at least twice as likely to develop type 2 diabetes or trouble tolerating glucose. And there's more. A 2013 study of about 54,000 adults over the age of 44 found links between too much sleep and increased rates of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, stroke, and mental health issues. In fact, the rates of coronary heart disease, diabetes, and stroke were even higher in people who overslept than in those who slept too little. So, the links are there. Sleep correlates with all kinds of health problems. But it's hard to say whether too much sleep actually causes these issues. It's totally possible that oversleeping is actually a symptom of things like depression or heart disease, or that there's some other connection. Either way, consistently sleeping too much might be a bad sign. Birds can be very impressive at imitation, which is another word for copying. When chicks are born, they hear sounds made by the other birds in their flock, or their family. And they practice imitating those sounds, until they sound just like the rest of their flock. There are lots of reasons that birds might need to know the sounds that other animals make. For one thing, birds in the wild are very social. They help out other members of their flock. The calls of different flocks of birds, even two different flocks of the same kind of bird, are all different from each other. It helps to know who your family is by the familiar sounds they make. Plus, it's helpful to learn animal calls that might scare away predators, so that the birds don't get eaten. And being good at imitating shows that a bird is smart, and has a good memory and strong muscles, which makes it more appealing to other birds in its flock. The birds that can copy human speech are especially talented imitators. Birds that learn to imitate humans come from two groups: parrots, like African greys, cockatoos, and parakeets, and songbirds, like mynas, starlings, and even crows. They're such good imitators that sometimes they can even fool people. Some pet birds have escaped into the wild, and taught the calls they learned from humans, to the other birds in their new flock. So sometimes people have gone for a nature walk, and heard someone calling out. They looked around for a person, only to realize that the birds were the ones talking. Rising temperatures and seas, massive droughts, changing landscapes. Successfully adapting to climate change is growing increasingly important. For humans, this means using our technological advancement to find solutions, like smarter cities and better water management. But for some plants and animals, adapting to these global changes involves the most ancient solution of all: evolution. Evolutionary adaptation usually occurs along time scales of thousands to hundreds of thousands of years. But in cases where species are under especially strong selective conditions, like those caused by rapidly changing climates, adaptive evolution can happen more quickly. In recent decades, we've seen many plants, animals, and insects relocating themselves and undergoing changes to their body sizes, and the dates they flower or breed. But many of these are plastic, or non-heritable changes to an individual's physical traits. And there are limits to how much an organism can change its own physiology to meet environmental requirements. That's why scientists are seeking examples of evolutionary changes coded in species DNA that are heritable, long-lasting, and may provide a key to their future.